I'm Debbie Hamlett from NET, which is the public media PBS NPR station here that serves all of Nebraska. How many of you listen to NPR or watch PBS ever in the last? Oh, yay, lots of fans, good, yay. That's what you're supposed to do, raise your hand, yes. So this year, public broadcasting, public television stations across the country are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. 50 years that it had been on public television. So here in Nebraska, March 20th was proclaimed as Be My Neighbor Day. We had a lot of fun with that on social media. You might have seen some of it, where what could you do for your neighbor? How could you be out in your community doing things that would be good neighbors, the way that Mr. Rogers was. So you might have seen some of the buzz around a new movie coming out entitled You're My Friend, featuring Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. Now, come on, that's going to be good. Last month, you might have seen a new documentary called Mr. Rogers, It's You I Like. There's even a new postage stamp, for those of you who still use snail mail. Mr. Rogers is an extra big deal this year. I discovered Mr. Rogers late in life when he spoke at my college graduation. So before my college graduation, I have to say I didn't watch Mr. Rogers. I watched other things, but Mr. Rogers just wasn't on my radar. So when they announced that Mr. Rogers was going to be at my commencement, I wasn't necessarily all that thrilled with it. Let's just say the year before, we had a really well-known comedian. At the time, it was Bill Cosby, who at the time was a really big deal. It was way cool. I mean, people were, scalping their tickets for, and saying that you could only bring 4 people to the commencement. I mean, it was a big deal. So when they announced that we were getting Mr. Rogers, I thought, wow, really? So when graduation day arrived, I was sitting there with thousands of people, anxiously awaiting, that ritual of walking across the stage, and I was ready to get on with life. Let's get on past this. So Mr. Rogers walks out, a hush fell across the audience, and he quietly, calmly, sat down at a piano and said he'd written a song just for us. It's hard to explain the way I felt. It was kind of surreal. You know how you get that sort of like the noise fades in the back and this huge sea of people. I felt as though he was singing to me, just me. And it was a moment that stuck with me all these years. He had an incredible gift of making you feel special, even though most people saw him through a television lens. As I thought about this talk today, Mr. Rogers stood out as someone that had qualities that I admired, and that I know a lot of you probably admire too. And you are all leaders, whether it's officially at your work, or it's in your family, or it's in your neighborhood. Sometimes being a leader is hard. Here are a few things that I learned from Mr. Rogers that might help you. So Mr. Rogers always said, I like you just the way you are. Everyone has unique talents and qualities to share. And you may be saying, well, I don't like everyone that I work with, or I don't like everyone in my family. That's okay. You can find one thing that you like about everyone. You don't have to like everything, but there was always something that Mr. Rogers would come out with that was positive. He always took the positive side of things. And you may not have all the qualities that you're looking for on your team. Some folks may need a little more coaxing. Some need a little more encouragement to shine. Not everybody's talent is immediately recognized. I've had folks on my team before that have said, I can't do that, or I'm not good at that. But you know what? With just a little bit of encouragement, you can say, well, what about this? What about if you just try this thing? And it's been really enjoyable to be able to bring out small little things in folks that think, oh no, I can't do that. And they eventually will come around and say, oh, well, I guess I did okay on that. Mr. Rogers had a lifelong quest to learn and to experience life through different perspectives, There wasn't just one way to look at something. It's important to ask for feedback, to include people who aren't always the ones that raise their hands. They have something important to say too. Differences really do make us stronger. He didn't shy away from difficult topics, he embraced them. Everything from birth, divorce, death, assassination, race relations. You'll have difficult moments as a leader. People are complicated. Deadlines loom. There's never enough time to do everything that you want to do. And it's important to make choices about how you spend your time. And don't be afraid to tackle tough issues. These are the things that have made me grow the most. When I tackle something that I think, wow, this is overwhelming. When I take the time to really dissect something and say, okay, who on the team can help with this? It usually is something that I've grown from doing. You never know how you'll affect someone. You leave part of yourself at every meeting. It's a little scary to think about. At least for me, it's a little scary. Some of the meetings you think, oh, I might not have done as well as I needed to at that meeting. So make it count. When you leave a little bit of something, make it count. Make it positive. Make it something that people will be able to draw on. Be fearless. I've grown the most when I push myself to do the things that scare me the most. Well, maybe a little bit like this talk. It might be a little scary to be in front of folks. It's actually easier if I don't know anybody in the audience, and unfortunately, I know people here. So think for a second. When was the last time you pushed yourself past your comfort zone? The last time that you did something that truly kind of made you a little bit nervous? Mr. Rogers took time to connect. We've all heard the importance of listening. We've all heard the cliches, listen more, speak less. You have 2 ears for a reason, 1 mouth, all of those sort of things. And these are all easy things to say and make perfect sense, but frequently are hard to do. To really listen with intent, not to jump to an answer, and to allow space for conversation. You won't have all the answers, and that's okay. Sometimes the questions are more important than the answers. Mr. Rogers had a calm, cool, consistent demeanor. He also knew when it was okay to put himself out there and to have some fun. You can't be buttoned up all the time. You gotta know when you can have some fun sometimes. Life is too short to be serious all the time. No matter what kind of job you can have fun with what you do, and you can love what you're doing. He challenged us to live our lives with a sense of childlike wonder, even as adults, because creativity and learning happen best when we're play. He would point out that for children, playing is learning, and that it doesn't simply stop when we grow up. Mr. Rogers was authentic. People will connect most with you when you are yourself. Everyone has something to offer. Look at this picture. It is really hard not to feel how much he loved what he was doing. Take a few seconds right now to think about someone you admire, someone who inspires you to be your best self. I encourage you to celebrate Mr. Rogers by using just one of the lessons that I've shared with you today. There's only one person in the world like you. Stand tall. Be a leader in your neighborhood. Thank you.